Climate change. Climate change is a pressing issue that affects us all. It refers to the long-term changes in the Earth's climate, including changes in temperature, precipitation, and sea level rise, among others. These changes are caused by human activities, such as burning fossil fuels and deforestation, that release large amounts of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. The consequences of climate change are far-reaching and devastating. Rising temperatures lead to more frequent and intense heat waves, droughts, and wildfires, while sea level rise threatens to inundate coastal cities and low-lying areas. Climate change also impacts biodiversity and ecosystems, leading to the extinction of species and the disruption of food chains. To address climate change, we need to take action at the individual, local, national, and global levels. This includes reducing our carbon footprint by using renewable energy sources, conserving water, and reducing waste. Governments must also take action by implementing policies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, investing in clean energy technologies, and protecting natural habitats. It's important to remember that addressing climate change requires a collective effort. By working together, we can make a difference and create a more sustainable future for ourselves and future generations. Below is an overview of the video's outline. Introduction. Brief overview of climate change. Importance of the issue. 2. Background on climate change. What is climate change? B. Causes of climate change. Evidence of climate change. Impacts of climate change. 3. Government response. International agreements and commitments. B. Government policies and actions. Criticisms and challenges. 4. Individual action. Changes in personal behavior. Advocacy and activism. C. Education and awareness. 5. The future of climate change. Projections and prediction. SB. Potential scenarios and outcomes. The role of science and innovation. 6. Global collaboration. Cooperation among countries. Public-private partnerships. Challenges to collaboration. 7. Technology. Clean energy technologies. Smart grid and energy efficiency. Challenges to technology deployment. 8. Economy impacts. Direct economy impact. SB. Indirect economy impacts. Potential for economics benefits. 9. Conclusion. Summary of key points. B. Call to action. Introduction. A brief overview of climate change. Climate change is a complex and multifaceted issue that has emerged as one of the most pressing global challenges of our time. At its core, climate change refers to long-term shifts in global weather patterns and temperatures, which have been observed and measured since the early 20th century. These shifts are driven by a range of factors, including natural variations in the Earth's climate system and human activities that emit greenhouse gases. The world's leading climate scientists agree that the primary cause of this change is the emission of greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide from human activities. The burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas is the largest contributor to these emissions, accounting for about 75% of all greenhouse gas emissions. Other human activities that contribute to greenhouse gas emissions include deforestation, agriculture, and industrial processes. The effects of climate change are widespread and have significant impacts on natural ecosystems and human societies. These impacts include rising temperatures, changing precipitation patterns, more frequent and severe weather events, sea level rise, ocean acidification, and changes to ecosystems and biodiversity. These impacts can lead to a range of social, economic, and health consequences, such as food and water insecurity, displacement of communities, and increased risk of disease. Addressing climate change requires collective action at all levels, from individuals to governments and international organizations. This includes reducing greenhouse gas emissions, adapting to the impacts of climate change, and supporting sustainable and resilient communities. By working together and taking action, we can help to create a more sustainable and equitable future for ourselves and future generations. The importance of the issue. The issue of climate change is of paramount importance due to its far-reaching and potentially catastrophic consequences. The Earth's climate system is intricately interconnected, and any disruption to this system can have significant impacts on natural systems and human societies. One of the most significant consequences of climate change is rising temperatures. As temperatures continue to increase, we are already witnessing melting glaciers and ice sheets, which contribute to rising sea levels. This, in turn, increases the risk of coastal flooding, displacement of communities, and loss of critical infrastructure. The impact of sea level rise is particularly severe for small island states and low-lying areas. Another consequence of climate change is extreme weather events, such as hurricanes, droughts, and wildfires. These events can lead to loss of life and property, as well as significant economic damage. Moreover, changes in precipitation patterns can impact food security, with crop yields and food production being affected by changes in temperature, rainfall, and soil moisture. Climate change also poses significant risks to ecosystems and biodiversity. As temperatures continue to rise, many species may be unable to adapt or move to suitable habitats, leading to extinction. This, in turn, can have significant impacts on the functioning of ecosystems and the services they provide, such as clean air and water, and nutrient cycling. Finally, it is important to note that climate change impacts are felt differently across countries and communities, with vulnerable populations such as indigenous people, women, and children being particularly affected. Climate change exacerbates existing social and economic inequalities, and addressing climate change requires a just and equitable transition to a low-carbon economy. Given the scale and urgency of the problem, climate change has become a top priority for governments, businesses, and individuals worldwide. Addressing climate change requires collective action at all levels, from individuals reducing their carbon footprint to governments implementing policies and investing in renewable energy sources. By taking action now, we can help to mitigate the worst impacts of climate change and create a more sustainable and equitable future for ourselves and future generations. 2. Background on climate change. A. What is climate change? Climate change is a long-term shift in global weather patterns and temperatures that is primarily caused by human activity. Over the past century, human activity has significantly increased the concentration of greenhouse gases, particularly carbon dioxide, in the atmosphere. This increase is largely due to the burning of fossil fuels such as coal, oil, and gas, as well as deforestation and other land use changes. These human-induced changes to the atmosphere are causing the planet to warm at an unprecedented rate, with global temperatures rising by about 1.1 degrees Celsius, 2.0 degrees Fahrenheit, above pre-industrial levels as of 2021. The impacts of climate change are diverse and widespread. They include more frequent and severe heat waves, droughts, floods, and storms, rising sea levels, melting glaciers and ice caps, and changes in precipitation patterns. These impacts can have far-reaching consequences for natural ecosystems, human health and well-being, and global economies. Climate change also has important social justice dimensions, as vulnerable communities, such as those living in poverty, low-lying coastal areas, and areas prone to natural disasters, are likely to be disproportionately affected. In addition, climate change can exacerbate existing social inequalities, including disparities in access to resources and opportunities. Addressing climate change requires a collective effort from individuals, governments, businesses, and civil society organizations. This can involve a range of actions, such as reducing greenhouse gas emissions, transitioning to cleaner and more sustainable energy sources, improving energy efficiency, and adapting to the impacts of a changing climate. By taking action to address climate change, we can help to mitigate its worst impacts and create a more sustainable future for ourselves and future generations. Because of climate change, human activity is the primary cause of climate change. The burning of fossil fuels, deforestation, and other industrial processes emit large amounts of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Other human activities, such as agriculture and transportation, also contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. In addition to the burning of fossil fuels and deforestation, there are several other human activities that contribute to climate change. One significant contributor is agriculture, particularly livestock production. The process of raising and processing livestock releases large amounts of methane, a potent greenhouse gas, into the atmosphere. Another major contributor is transportation, which releases carbon dioxide and other pollutants into the atmosphere through the burning of fossil fuels. Industrial processes such as cement production and the manufacture of chemicals also contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. Beyond human activity, natural factors can also contribute to climate change. For example, volcanic activity can release large amounts of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, while changes in solar radiation can affect the amount of heat that the Earth receives from the Sun. However, these natural factors alone cannot account for the magnitude and speed of the changes currently being observed in the Earth's climate. See evidence of climate change. There is overwhelming scientific evidence that climate change is happening and that human activity is the primary cause. This evidence includes rising temperatures, melting glaciers, and rising sea levels. Climate scientists have also observed changes in weather patterns, such as more frequent and severe heat waves, droughts, and floods. In addition to the observable changes in weather patterns and natural systems, there is also a wealth of data collected from various sources that support the existence and causes of climate change. This data comes from sources such as ice cores, tree rings, and ocean sediment cores, and provides a record of global temperatures and atmospheric composition dating back hundreds of thousands of years. Analysis of this data shows that global temperatures have increased at an unprecedented rate in recent decades, and that this increase corresponds to the period during which humans have been emitting large amounts of greenhouse gases. This link between human activity and the observed changes in climate is further supported by sophisticated computer models that simulate the Earth's climate and can accurately reproduce observed changes when taking into account human activities. Furthermore, research conducted across various fields, including biology, ecology, and geology, has provided additional evidence of the impacts of climate change on natural systems and species. For example, studies have shown that many species are changing their ranges and behaviors in response to changing climate patterns, and that ecosystems are being disrupted as a result. Taken together, this evidence strongly supports the existence of climate change and the role of human activity in driving this change. The impacts of climate change. Climate change is already having a significant impact on the planet and its inhabitants. Rising temperatures and sea levels are causing the loss of biodiversity, changes in weather patterns, and more frequent natural disasters. Climate change is also affecting human health, with increased heat-related illnesses and the spread of disease. The impact of climate change is particularly severe for vulnerable populations, including those living in poverty or in areas exposed to extreme weather events. The impacts of climate change are wide-ranging and are expected to become more severe as global temperatures continue to rise. Here are some of the key impacts. 1. Loss of biodiversity. Climate change is causing a loss of biodiversity as species struggle to adapt to changing temperatures, rainfall patterns, and other environmental conditions. This can lead to a decline in ecosystem services, such as pollination and water purification, which are essential for human well-being. 2. Changes in weather patterns. Climate change is causing changes in weather patterns, including more frequent and severe heat waves, droughts, floods, and storms. These changes can have significant impacts on agriculture, water resources, and infrastructure, as well as on human health and safety. 3. Rising sea levels. As temperatures rise, the melting of ice sheets and glaciers is causing sea levels to rise, which can lead to flooding, erosion, and loss of coastal habitats. This can have significant impacts on infrastructure, property values, and human populations in coastal areas. 4. Health impacts. Climate change is affecting human health through increased heat-related illnesses, the spread of disease by insects, and air pollution. These impacts are particularly severe for vulnerable populations, such as children, the elderly, and those with pre-existing health conditions. 5. Economic impacts. Climate change is expected to have significant economic impacts, including damage to infrastructure, loss of property value, and increased costs associated with extreme weather events. These impacts can be costly and disruptive to businesses, governments, and individuals. 6. Social impacts. Climate change can exacerbate existing social inequalities, as vulnerable populations are often disproportionately affected by its impacts. This can lead to increased social unrest, displacement, and conflict. Overall, the impacts of climate change are complex and multifaceted, affecting many different aspects of human and ecological systems. Addressing climate change will require coordinated and sustained action at the global, national, and local levels. 3. Government response. International agreements and commitments. The Paris Agreement is a legally binding international treaty that aims to address climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions and strengthening countries' ability to adapt to its effects. The agreement was negotiated in 2015 and entered into force on November 4, 2016. It is the result of years of international negotiations and represents a global consensus on the need to address climate change. Under the Paris Agreement, each country is required to set and report on its own National Climate Action Plan, known as a Nationally Determined Contribution, NDC, which outlines the steps it will take to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to the effects of climate change. The agreement also provides for international cooperation and support to help countries meet their climate goals, particularly for developing countries that may lack the resources and capacity to do so on their own. The Kyoto Protocol, adopted in 1997, was the first international agreement to set binding targets for greenhouse gas emissions reduction. The protocol requires developed countries to reduce their emissions to below 1990 levels by the end of the first commitment period, which was from 2008 to 2012. The protocol also established mechanisms to promote emissions reduction, including emissions trading and a Clean Development Mechanism, CDM. The Montreal Protocol, adopted in 1987, aims to protect the ozone layer by phasing out the production and consumption of substances that deplete it. While the focus of the protocol is on ozone depletion, it has also had a positive impact on climate change by reducing emissions of hydrofluorocarbons, HFCs, which are potent greenhouse gases. In addition to these international agreements, many countries have adopted their own domestic policies and regulations to address climate change, such as carbon pricing, renewable energy mandates, and energy efficiency standards. Government policies and actions. Governments play a crucial role in addressing climate change through the implementation of policies and actions. One of the most significant actions that governments can take is to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. Governments can set emission standards for vehicles, power plants, and other industrial processes, and establish regulations that limit emissions from these sources. For example, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, has implemented regulations under the Clean Air Act to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from power plants. Governments can also incentivize the development and deployment of renewable energy technologies, such as solar, wind, and hydropower. These incentives can take the form of tax credits, grants, or other financial incentives that make it more cost-effective for businesses and individuals to invest in clean energy technologies. In addition, governments can provide support for research and development of new clean technologies, which can help to accelerate the transition to a low-carbon economy. Carbon pricing mechanisms, such as carbon taxes or cap-and-trade systems, are another policy tool that governments can use to encourage the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. These mechanisms put a price on carbon emissions, making it more expensive for businesses and individuals to emit greenhouse gases. This creates a financial incentive to reduce emissions and can help to spur the development and deployment of clean technologies. Finally, governments can play a role in raising public awareness about the need to address climate change and the actions that individuals can take to reduce their carbon footprint. Governments can launch public awareness campaigns and provide education and outreach programs to help individuals understand the impact of their actions on the environment and encourage them to take action to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. See criticisms and challenges. Despite government efforts, some critics argue that the response to climate change has been inadequate. They point to the slow pace of emissions reductions and the lack of political will to take bold action. Additionally, some governments are still heavily reliant on fossil fuels and have been reluctant to make the transition to clean energy sources. There are also challenges related to funding for climate action, particularly for developing countries that may lack the resources to address the impacts of climate change. Another criticism of government action on climate change is the lack of coordination and cooperation among nations. Because climate change is a global problem, it requires a coordinated response from all nations. However, some countries have been reluctant to take action, citing concerns about economic competitiveness or sovereignty. This lack of cooperation can hinder efforts to address climate change, as it can lead to uncoordinated policies and inconsistent approaches. Another challenge is the limited public understanding of climate change and its impacts. While awareness of climate change has increased in recent years, many people still do not fully understand the science behind climate change or the severity of its impacts. This can make it difficult for governments to implement effective policies and can also hinder public support for climate action. Finally, there are also challenges related to the implementation of climate policies and the transition to a low-carbon economy. For example, the transition to renewable energy sources may require significant investments in infrastructure and changes in energy systems. These changes can be disruptive to certain industries and communities, and governments may need to provide support to ensure a just transition to a low-carbon economy. Additionally, there may be concerns about the potential impact of climate policies on energy prices or employment, which can create political opposition to climate action. 4. Individual actions. 8. Changes in personal behavior. Individuals can play a significant role in addressing climate change by making changes to their daily behavior. By reducing their carbon footprint, individuals can help to mitigate the impact of climate change and promote a more sustainable future. Here are some changes in personal behavior that can help to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. 1. Reduce energy consumption. Individuals can reduce their energy consumption by turning off lights and electronics when not in use, using energy-efficient appliances and light bulbs, and unplugging chargers when not in use. Simple changes like these can have a significant impact on reducing energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. 2. Drive less. Transportation is a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Individuals can reduce their carbon footprint by driving less, carpooling, using public transportation, or biking or walking instead of driving. This not only reduces greenhouse gas emissions but also promotes a healthier lifestyle. 3. Eat a plant-based diet. The production of animal-based products is a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Individuals can reduce their carbon footprint by eating a plant-based diet, which requires less land, water, and energy to produce. 4. Reduce water consumption. Water is a precious resource, and reducing water consumption can help to conserve this resource and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Individuals can reduce water consumption by taking shorter showers, fixing leaks, and using water-efficient appliances and fixtures. 5. Use renewable energy. Individuals can also reduce their carbon footprint by using renewable energy sources such as solar or wind power. Installing solar panels or wind turbines at home can help to reduce reliance on fossil fuels and promote a more sustainable energy future. By making these simple changes, individuals can help to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and promote a more sustainable future. However, it is important to note that systemic changes, such as government policies and investments in renewable energy sources, are also necessary to address the scale of the problem of climate change. B. Advocacy and activism. Advocacy and activism are crucial in raising awareness about the urgency of climate change and pushing for effective solutions. Climate activists can work to create pressure on governments and businesses to take meaningful action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and transition to a more sustainable economy. One way that individuals can engage in climate activism is by participating in organized protests and rallies. These events can help to raise public awareness about the urgency of climate change and demonstrate the widespread support for climate action. For example, the global climate strike in September 2019 saw millions of people around the world taking to the streets to demand climate action. Another way that individuals can engage in climate activism is by contacting their elected officials and expressing their support for climate policies and legislation. By calling, emailing, or writing to their representatives, individuals can help to build political will for climate action at the local, state, and national levels. Individuals can also support organizations that work on climate issues, either through volunteering or making donations. These organizations can include local climate groups, national advocacy organizations, and international nonprofits. Overall, advocacy and activism are important tools for individuals to use in the fight against climate change. By working together and speaking out for meaningful climate action, we can create a more sustainable and just future for ourselves and future generations. See education and awareness. Education and awareness about climate change are crucial for fostering a better understanding of the issue and building support for climate action. The more people understand the science of climate change and its potential impacts, the more likely they are to take meaningful action to address it. Individuals can educate themselves about climate change by reading books, articles, and reports on the topic, attending conferences or webinars, and seeking out educational resources from reputable organizations. Learning about the causes, impacts, and solutions to climate change can help individuals better understand the urgency of the issue and what can be done to address it. In addition to educating oneself, individuals can also help to raise awareness about climate change among their friends, family, and community. This can involve sharing information on social media, participating in local events and workshops, and talking to others about the importance of climate action. By spreading the word about climate change, individuals can help to build a sense of urgency and inspire others to take action. Furthermore, education and awareness can also play a role in shaping policy decisions. When more people are informed about the impacts of climate change and the need for action, they can advocate for policies and practices that support a more sustainable future. Educating policymakers and decision makers about the issue can also help to ensure that they prioritize climate action in their decision making. Overall, education and awareness are key components of addressing climate change. By educating oneself and others about the issue, individuals can help to build momentum for change and advocate for meaningful climate action. 5. The future of climate change. Current projections and predictions. Climate scientists have projected that if greenhouse gas emissions continue at current rates, the Earth's average surface temperature could increase by 1.5 to 5 degrees Celsius, 2.7 to 9 degrees Fahrenheit, by the end of this century, compared to pre-industrial levels. This temperature rise could lead to more frequent and severe heat waves, droughts, storms, and flooding, as well as rising sea levels and melting polar ice. Urgency of climate action. Individuals can help to build momentum for change. These changes could have severe impacts on global ecosystems, including coral reefs, forests, and agriculture. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, has warned that global food security could be at risk, with the potential for crop yields to decline and food prices to rise in many regions. In addition to the physical impacts of climate change, there are also social and economic implications. Climate change could exacerbate existing inequalities and increase the risk of conflict and displacement in vulnerable regions. The World Bank has estimated that climate change could push more than 100 million people into poverty by 2030. To avoid the worst impacts of climate change, scientists have called for a rapid and significant reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. The IPCC has stated that global emissions need to be cut in half by 2030 and reach net zero by around 2050 in order to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. However, current global emissions are still on track to lead to a temperature rise of at least 3 degrees Celsius by the end of the century, far above the levels considered safe by scientists. This highlights the urgent need for bold and rapid action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and transition to a more sustainable and equitable society. While the challenge of addressing climate change may seem daunting, there are also opportunities for positive change. By transitioning to a low-carbon economy, we can create new jobs and economic opportunities while also improving public health and protecting vulnerable communities. Through innovation and collaboration, we can work towards a more sustainable and resilient future for ourselves and future generations. B. Potential scenarios and outcomes. There are various potential scenarios and outcomes that could result from climate change. These includes increased frequency and severity of extreme weather events, such as hurricanes, floods, and wildfires. More frequent and longer-lasting heat waves, which could lead to health issues and strains on energy systems. Changes in precipitation patterns, with some regions experiencing more frequent and severe droughts, while others face increased flooding. Rising sea levels, which could lead to displacement of people living in coastal areas, loss of land and property, and damage to infrastructure and ecosystems. Disruption of ecosystems, which could lead to loss of biodiversity and impacts on agriculture, fisheries, and forestry. In addition to the potential scenarios and outcomes mentioned above, climate change could also exacerbate existing social and economic inequalities, with marginalized communities, such as low-income populations and indigenous people, being disproportionately affected. The impacts of climate change could lead to increased poverty, food insecurity, and conflicts over resources. In terms of global security, climate change could also lead to mass migration and displacement, as well as conflicts over natural resources and geopolitical power. However, it is important to note that the severity of these outcomes is not predetermined and can be mitigated through effective climate action. By reducing greenhouse gas emissions, investing in climate adaptation measures, and promoting social and economic equity, we can create a more sustainable and resilient future. C. The role of science and innovation. The role of science and innovation is critical in addressing the challenges of climate change. Developing and scaling up renewable energy technologies, such as wind, solar, and hydropower, is an essential step towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions and creating a more sustainable energy system. Advancements in energy storage and distribution technologies are also necessary to ensure that renewable energy sources can provide a reliable and resilient power grid. Agriculture is responsible for a significant portion of greenhouse gas emissions, and therefore developing and promoting more efficient and sustainable agricultural practices is crucial. This includes reducing food waste, increasing soil health, and promoting regenerative agriculture practices that sequester carbon in the soil. Carbon capture and storage technologies are also being developed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from industrial processes. This technology involves capturing carbon dioxide emissions from power plants or industrial processes and storing them in geological formations, such as deep underground. Investing in research on climate impacts and adaptation strategies is also crucial to inform policy and decision-making. This includes researching the potential impacts of climate change on different regions and sectors, as well as developing and testing adaptation strategies to minimize these impacts. Overall, the future of climate change depends on a combination of individual actions, government policies, and business practices to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to the impacts of a changing climate. While there is no single solution to the problem of climate change, continued research, innovation, and collective action can help to mitigate the worst impacts and create a more sustainable and resilient future for all. 6. Global collaboration. A. Cooperation among countries. In order to effectively address the issue of climate change, cooperation among countries is essential. This is because the impacts of climate change are not limited by national boundaries, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions and adapting to the impacts of climate change requires coordinated efforts from all nations. One way that countries can cooperate is by sharing information and best practices on climate action. This can include sharing data on greenhouse gas emissions, renewable energy adoption, and adaptation strategies. By sharing information and learning from each other's experiences, countries can accelerate progress towards their climate goals and avoid repeating mistakes made by others. Another important aspect of global cooperation on climate change is collaboration on research and development of clean technologies. This can involve sharing resources and expertise to develop more efficient and cost-effective renewable energy technologies, energy storage and distribution systems, and other clean technologies that can help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Financial and technical assistance to developing countries is also important in order to help them adapt to the impacts of climate change and transition to low-carbon economies. Developed countries can provide financial support to help developing countries reduce greenhouse gas emissions, build resilient infrastructure, and improve access to clean energy. This assistance can also help ensure that vulnerable populations, such as small island states and indigenous communities, are not left behind in the transition to a more sustainable future. Global cooperation is crucial to effectively addressing the issue of climate change. Through collaboration on information sharing, technology development, and financial assistance, countries can work together to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to the impacts of a changing climate. Public-private partnerships. Public-private partnerships are a form of collaboration between governments and private entities, such as businesses, non-profit organizations, and academic institutions. These partnerships are increasingly being used to address a wide range of global issues, including climate change. Public-private partnerships can provide a framework for cooperation and innovation, leveraging the resources and expertise of both the public and private sectors to achieve common goals. One of the key advantages of public-private partnerships in the context of climate change is that they can help to overcome some of the barriers to investment in sustainable development. For example, the high upfront costs of clean energy and technologies may be a barrier for many businesses, but partnerships with governments can provide incentives and funding to help overcome these barriers. In addition, public-private partnerships can help to address other challenges related to climate change, such as access to finance, technology transfer, and capacity building. One example of a successful public-private partnership for climate action is the Global Environment Facility, GEF. The GEF is a partnership between 183 countries, the private sector, and civil society, with a mission to address global environmental challenges such as climate change. The GEF provides grants and funding to support projects in developing countries that promote sustainable development and address climate change. The GEF also works with private sector partners to develop and scale up clean technologies, and to promote sustainable business practices. In addition to the GEF, there are many other examples of public-private partnerships for climate action. For example, the Climate Technology Center and Network, CTCN, is a partnership between the United Nations and the private sector, which provides technical assistance and capacity building to developing countries to help them implement climate action plans. The Sustainable Energy for All, SFOR initiative is another public-private partnership that aims to promote universal access to clean and affordable energy by 2030. Overall, public-private partnerships can play an important role in addressing climate change, by leveraging the resources and expertise of both the public and private sectors to achieve common goals. By promoting collaboration, innovation, and investment in sustainable development, public-private partnerships can help to create a more sustainable and resilient future for all. See challenges to collaboration. Collaboration between countries, especially in addressing climate change, can be challenging due to several reasons. One major challenge is the differences in priorities and interests among countries. For instance, some countries may prioritize economic growth over climate action, while others may prioritize environmental protection over economic growth. These differences can create disagreements and impede progress toward shared goals. Limited financial resources can also hinder collaboration. Developing countries, in particular, may lack the resources to implement climate mitigation and adaptation measures, which can make it difficult for them to fully participate in global climate action efforts. Developed countries can help by providing financial assistance and technology transfer to support climate action in developing countries. However, the limited availability of resources can make it difficult to provide adequate support. Another challenge is the lack of political will to take action on climate change. Political leaders may face opposition from interest groups or constituents who prioritize other issues over climate action. Additionally, climate change may not be perceived as an immediate threat, which can make it difficult to build political momentum for action. However, public opinion and pressure from civil society can help to build political will and create momentum for action. Finally, collaboration can be hampered by differences in approaches to addressing climate change. Some countries may prefer market-based solutions such as carbon pricing, while others may prioritize regulation or technological solutions. These differences can create disagreements on the best approach to addressing climate change and impede progress. Despite these challenges, collaboration among countries remains critical in addressing climate change. By finding common ground and working together towards shared goals, countries can overcome these challenges and make progress towards a more sustainable future. 7. Technology. A. Clean energy technologies. Clean energy technologies refer to renewable energy sources that produce little or no greenhouse gas emissions during power generation, thus helping to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases released into the atmosphere. These technologies have the potential to significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions and mitigate the impacts of climate change. Wind power is one of the most mature and widely deployed clean energy technologies. Wind turbines convert the kinetic energy of wind into electricity without producing any greenhouse gas emissions or air pollution. Solar power is another important clean energy technology that converts sunlight into electricity through photovoltaic (PV) cells. Hydropower, which harnesses the power of falling water to generate electricity, is also a widely used clean energy technology. The deployment of clean energy technologies has increased rapidly in recent years, driven by factors such as declining costs, policy support, and growing public awareness of climate change. According to the International Energy Agency, renewable energy sources accounted for almost 90% of the new power capacity added worldwide in 2020. Many countries have set ambitious targets to increase their use of renewable energy, with some aiming to achieve 100% renewable energy by 2050. Despite the progress made in deploying clean energy technologies, there are still challenges that need to be addressed. One of the biggest challenges is the intermittency of renewable energy sources, such as wind and solar, which can make it difficult to ensure a reliable and stable power supply. Energy storage technologies, such as batteries, are therefore an important area of research and development to help overcome this challenge. Another challenge is the need for supportive policies and incentives to encourage investment in clean energy technologies. Governments can play a critical role in creating a favorable regulatory environment and providing financial support for clean energy projects. Additionally, international collaboration and knowledge sharing can help to accelerate the deployment of clean energy technologies and maximize their impact on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. B. Smart grid and energy efficiency. A smart grid is an advanced electrical grid that incorporates information and communication technology, ICT, to better manage the generation, distribution, and consumption of electricity. It allows for more efficient use of renewable energy sources and helps to reduce the reliance on fossil fuels. By utilizing sensors, meters, and other devices, a smart grid can gather real-time data on energy demand and supply and adjust accordingly, reducing the need for excess energy production and waste. In addition to smart grid technology, improving energy efficiency is another key strategy for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. This can involve measures such as retrofitting buildings with better insulation, using more efficient appliances and lighting, and upgrading industrial processes to reduce energy waste. Improving energy efficiency can not only reduce greenhouse gas emissions but can also save money on energy bills, increase productivity, and improve the comfort and health of occupants. There are various programs and policies in place to encourage energy efficiency, such as building codes, appliance standards, and energy efficiency incentives. These efforts have already made significant progress in reducing energy waste and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but there is still room for improvement. Continued investment in energy efficiency and smart grid technology can help to further reduce greenhouse gas emissions and create a more sustainable and resilient energy system. See challenges to technology deployment. Another challenge to deploying clean energy technologies and improving energy efficiency is the existing infrastructure and systems that rely heavily on fossil fuels. For example, the transportation sector heavily relies on gasoline-powered vehicles, and the construction of new buildings and retrofitting of existing buildings can be costly and time-consuming. Additionally, there may be resistance to change from industries and individuals who are invested in the status quo. Another challenge is the need for international collaboration and cooperation in the deployment of clean energy technologies. Many countries still rely heavily on fossil fuels and may not have the resources or technology to transition to cleaner energy sources. This can result in unequal burdens and responsibilities among countries, as well as potential geopolitical tensions. Moreover, the uneven distribution of renewable resources, such as solar and wind energy, can present challenges to their deployment at scale. For example, areas with high potential for solar or wind energy may be far from urban centers that require the energy, requiring expensive transmission infrastructure to be built. To overcome these challenges, governments can provide incentives for the adoption of clean energy technologies and the improvement of energy efficiency, such as subsidies, tax credits, and regulatory requirements. Public-private partnerships can also play a role in facilitating the deployment of clean energy technologies. Additionally, international cooperation and collaboration can help to ensure equitable distribution of clean energy resources and reduce geopolitical tensions. 8. Economic impacts. Direct economic impacts. Climate change is expected to have direct economic impacts, including damage to infrastructure, loss of crops, and increased costs associated with extreme weather events. These impacts can be costly and disruptive to businesses, governments, and individuals. Climate change can have significant direct economic impacts, particularly as extreme weather events become more frequent and severe. For example, more intense and frequent storms and floods can cause damage to buildings, homes, and infrastructure, leading to costly repairs and reconstruction. This can impact businesses and governments, as well as individuals who may not have adequate insurance coverage to cover these costs. Climate change can also affect agriculture and food production, with changes in temperature, precipitation patterns, and soil moisture levels impacting crop yields and quality. Droughts and heat waves can cause crop failures, while floods and storms can damage crops and infrastructure. These impacts can result in higher food prices and reduced availability, as well as lost income for farmers and other agricultural workers. Furthermore, climate change can increase the frequency and intensity of wildfires, which can have significant economic impacts. Wildfires can damage or destroy homes, businesses, and infrastructure, leading to costly repairs and reconstruction. Additionally, the smoke and pollution from wildfires can impact air quality, leading to increased healthcare costs and reduced productivity. Overall, the direct economic impacts of climate change can be significant and widespread, affecting businesses, governments, and individuals across many sectors of the economy. It is therefore important for governments, businesses, and individuals to take action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to the impacts of a changing climate. The indirect economic impacts. In addition to direct economic impacts, climate change can also have indirect economic impacts. For example, changes in climate patterns can affect tourism, real estate values, and insurance rates. These indirect impacts can have cascading effects throughout the economy. The indirect economic impacts of climate change can have far-reaching consequences that go beyond the immediate effects on infrastructure and crops. For example, changes in climate patterns can have significant effects on tourism, a major industry in many countries. Warmer temperatures may lead to shorter ski seasons, while increased frequency and severity of storms, floods, and other extreme weather events can make some tourist destinations less attractive or even inaccessible. This can result in decreased revenue for local businesses, such as hotels, restaurants, and tour operators, as well as a loss of jobs for those employed in the tourism industry. Real estate values can also be affected by climate change. Properties located in areas that are prone to flooding or other climate-related hazards may become less desirable or even unsellable, resulting in a loss of value for homeowners and investors. As sea levels rise and coastal areas become more vulnerable to storm surges, the value of coastal properties may decrease, which could have broader implications for the economy as a whole. Insurance rates can also be affected by climate change. As the frequency and severity of extreme weather events increase, insurance companies may be forced to pay out more in claims, which can lead to higher premiums for customers. This can have a ripple effect throughout the economy, as businesses and individuals are forced to pay more for insurance, reducing their ability to invest in other areas. In summary, the indirect economic impacts of climate change can be just as significant as the direct impacts. By affecting industries such as tourism and real estate, as well as insurance rates, climate change can have far-reaching consequences for the economy as a whole. See potential for economic benefits. While the economic impacts of climate change are expected to be negative overall, there is also potential for economic benefits associated with addressing climate change. For example, investments in clean energy and energy efficiency can create new jobs and spur economic growth. Additionally, measures to reduce greenhouse gas emissions can help to mitigate the worst economic impacts of climate change. Investments in addressing climate change have the potential to create economic opportunities and benefits across various sectors. For instance, a transition to renewable energy sources can create jobs in the manufacturing, installation, and maintenance of wind turbines, solar panels, and other clean energy technologies. The renewable energy sector has already been shown to create more jobs per unit of energy than fossil fuel-based energy sources. In addition to job creation, investments in climate change solutions can also spur innovation and technological advancement. Research and development in areas such as advanced batteries, carbon capture and storage, and sustainable agriculture can lead to new business opportunities and the creation of new industries. Furthermore, addressing climate change can also lead to cost savings in the long term. For example, energy efficiency measures, such as upgrading insulation and replacing old appliances, can reduce energy consumption and save money on utility bills. Investing in climate resilience measures, such as improving infrastructure to withstand extreme weather events, can also help to prevent costly damages and disruptions in the future. In summary, while the economic impacts of climate change are expected to be negative, addressing climate change can also create opportunities for economic growth, job creation, and technological innovation. By embracing these opportunities and investing in sustainable solutions, countries can build a more resilient and prosperous economy for the future. 9. Conclusion. A summary of key points. Throughout the article, we have examined the complex and multifaceted issue of climate change, exploring its background, causes, impacts, government response, individual action, and future projections. We have seen that climate change is not just an environmental issue, but also a social, economic, and political issue that affects many aspects of our lives. We have learned that climate change is caused by the emission of greenhouse gases, primarily from burning fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas. These emissions trap heat in the atmosphere and cause global temperatures to rise, leading to a range of impacts such as sea level rise, extreme weather events, and impacts on biodiversity and ecosystems. We have also seen that governments around the world have taken action to address climate change, through international agreements like the Paris Agreement and national policies such as emissions reduction targets and renewable energy mandates. However, there are also challenges and criticisms to these efforts, such as lack of enforcement mechanisms and resistance from some sectors of society. Individuals can also take action to address climate change, through lifestyle changes like reducing energy consumption and meat consumption, supporting renewable energy, and engaging in climate activism. While individual actions alone may not be enough to address the scale of the climate crisis, they are an important part of the solution and can help to create momentum and awareness around the issue. Finally, we have seen that the future of climate change is uncertain and dependent on the actions we take today. While there are significant challenges and potential risks, there are also opportunities for innovation, collaboration, and positive change. By working together and taking action at all levels, we can help to create a more sustainable and resilient future for ourselves and future generations. Be called to action. In light of the urgency of the climate crisis, it is crucial that we take action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to the impacts of climate change. Here are some potential actions that individuals, governments, and businesses can take. Reduce energy used by improving energy efficiency in buildings and transportation. Shift towards renewable energy sources like solar, wind, and hydropower. Reduce meat consumption, since meat production contributes significantly to greenhouse gas emissions. Invest in public transportation and electric vehicles to reduce reliance on fossil fuels. Implement policies like carbon taxes or cap-and-trade systems to incentivize companies to reduce emissions. Support climate education and advocacy efforts to raise awareness about the issue and promote action. Ultimately, addressing climate change will require collective action and collaboration on a global scale. By taking action today, we can help to create a more sustainable and equitable future for generations to come. Thanks for watching.